Right now, in your yard, there are plants you probably yank out without a second thought, and someone, somewhere, once relied on those same greens as food, medicine, or even ritual. Today we're counting down 10 common weeds with surprising health-related stories attached to them. Nutrients that rival supermarket leaves, compounds that draw the attention of lab researchers, and traditions that stretch back to monasteries, foragers, and even ancient burials. I'll give you quick ID tips, the noteworthy health-related fact that makes each plant surprising, a bit of historical and cultural context, what modern science currently says, with clear qualifiers, how people traditionally prepared or used the plant, and an important safety note for each. 2 highlights I'll flag up front. One of these plants has appeared in archaeological discussions tied to ancient burials, and another is a close relative of the commercial fiber psyllium. Stick with me. Some of these stories will change how you look at the patch of green by your porch. I'm a curious guide, not a clinician. I'll describe traditional uses and emerging research, but I won't be prescribing doses or saying any of these plants cure conditions. Correct identification, common sense safety, and a chat with a healthcare professional before using plants medicinally are essential. If you like surprising natural hacks and historical curiosities, hit subscribe. I'll keep bringing this kind of grounded, cautious exploration. 10. Ground elder, Agopodium podagraria, the sprawling goutweed that many gardeners despise because it sends runners under fences and pops up in shady beds. It's a low, compound-leaved plant that forms bright green patches in spring. The surprising health-related angle. In medieval Europe, ground elder was commonly associated with gout and joint complaints. Monks and herbalists prized it as a kitchen and medicinal green. The name podagraria literally links it to gout in old herbals, and monastic gardens often contained it for both food and remedy. In culinary terms, younger leaves were used as a cooked green, and the plant appears in several ethnobotanical records as a spring vegetable when greens were scarce. What about modern science? Ground elder contains a mix of flavonoids and other phenolic compounds that have antioxidant potential in lab assays, meaning they show activity in test tube studies looking at free radicals. Nutritionally, the leaves are a source of vitamins and minerals like many wild greens, though detailed nutrient profiles are less widely published than for mainstream salad greens. Evidence for clinical benefits against arthritis or gout is essentially absent. Its historical reputation is cultural and folk-based rather than proof of an effective treatment. Traditional preparations involved cooking the leaves like spinach or adding them to soups and potages in early spring. Foragers today sometimes blanch young leaves to mellow bitter notes. Safety note, ground elder is generally considered edible when cooked, but like any wild green, it can be confused with lookalikes in poorly lit settings. And people with sensitive stomachs may find some wild greens a little harsh raw. Also, if you live near roads or sprayed lawns, urban pollution and pesticide exposure are real concerns. Always consider source and site. Next up, a sticky, tiny vine that people once used as a lymphatic brush and even roasted into a coffee substitute. 9. Cleavers, Galium aperine, those stringy, sticky plants you find clinging to socks and dog fur. Cleavers are easy to recognize. Square stems with whorls of narrow leaves and tiny hooked hairs that latch onto anything that passes. The surprise here is twofold. People traditionally used cleavers as a lymphatic tonic, a plant believed to support drainage of the lymphatic system, and its seeds were historically roasted and used as a coffee substitute in parts of Europe. That combination of practical uses, herbal and culinary, is why cleavers showed up in folk medicine books across regions. Historically, herbalists recommended cleavers as part of spring cleansing regimens, often as an infusion made with cold or lukewarm water to pull out the plant's soluble components gently. In some traditions, a cold infusion was thought to extract different compounds than hot water and was used to make tinctures or skin washes. From a chemical standpoint, cleavers contain iridoid glycosides and flavonoids, groups of compounds that often show mild biological activity in laboratory studies. However, most research consists of preliminary lab work and ethnobotanical surveys rather than robust human trials. The coffee substitute angle comes from roasted seeds and roots, a workaround in times when imported coffee was scarce. Practical, historical use. People steeped fresh cleavers in cold water for an hour or more to make a tonic, or briefly cooked the young shoots with other greens. Because the plant is clingy, it was also used decoratively in folk crafts, and sometimes in poultices, where surface adhesion helped keep a dressing in place. Safety note. Cleavers are not known for major toxicities, but skin contact can be irritating for some, and misidentification with other Galium species is possible. Avoid harvesting from chemically treated lawns, ready for something that used to flavor medieval beers and served as a folk remedy for respiratory issues. Here comes ground ivy. 8. Creeping Charlie, ground ivy, Glechoma hederaceae. A low-growing, ivy-like ground cover with scalloped leaves and small purple flowers, commonly carpeting lawns and shady corners. The surprise: ground ivy was historically used in brewing long before hops became standard. It flavored and preserved beer as part of Groot blends, and folk medicine lists it for respiratory complaints, digestion, and as an anti-inflammatory. That small, glossy-leafed plant has a larger cultural footprint than its size suggests. In medieval and early modern Europe, brewers relied on local herbs, and ground ivy's aromatic profile made it useful for bittering and flavoring. Herbalists in various regions recommended it for coughs, sore throats, and catarrh. It showed up in monastic herbals and apothecaries' notes. Modern phytochemical studies identify polyphenols, tannins, and compounds like rosmarinic acid in many members of the mint family, which help explain antioxidant and modest anti-inflammatory signals seen in lab assays. Again, most work is preliminary. Cell culture and animal studies that indicate potential, not proof for therapeutic claims in people. Traditional preparations included steeping the herb in hot water as a tea, adding fresh leaves to cooking, or using it within a brew. For gardeners, the plant's ability to spread under lawn turf explains why it's classed as a weed in many yards. Safety caveat: ground ivy can be mistaken for other low plants in poor light, and tannins can cause gastrointestinal upset in sensitive individuals if taken in very large amounts. Also, because it's common in lawns, be mindful of chemical treatments and dog urine when assessing edibility. Coming next is a tangy little plant that found its way into a well-known controversial herbal formula. 7. Sheep sorrel, Rumex acetosella, a low arrowhead-leafed weed that gives crunchy, sour nibbles in spring and summer. The surprising headline for sheep sorrel is its role in Essiac, a herbal formula popularized in the 20th century by René Cayce. Sheep sorrel was one of the ingredients in that mix. Historically, sorrels, including sheep sorrel, were used as souring agents in soups and as traditional tonics, appreciated for their sharp, lemony flavor and high vitamin C content when used sparingly. From a chemistry and nutrition perspective, sheep sorrel contains oxalic acid, which gives the sour taste, and is why people with certain kidney issues are often advised to limit high oxalate foods. It also contains vitamin C and various polyphenols. Laboratory studies sometimes pick up antioxidant activity from Rumex species, but lab activity does not automatically translate to safe or effective medicinal use in people. The association with Essiac came from anecdotal and testimonial histories rather than rigorous clinical trials. While the story is culturally interesting, it's not a substitute for evidence-based medicine. Traditionally, people used small amounts of sorrel leaves in soups, salads and sauces to brighten flavors, or cooked them briefly to tame the sharpness. Safety note: avoid heavy consumption if you have a history of kidney stones, are on certain medications, or have been advised to limit oxalate intake. Also, the plant can be confused with dock species and others. Positive identification matters. Up next, a humble little herb whose very name, self-heal, hints at the uses people historically trusted it for. 6. Self-heal Prunella vulgaris, a low mound of lance-shaped leaves topped with tiny violet spikes of flowers. If you've ever seen a small patch of purple poking from a lawn edge, that could be self-heal. It earned its common name because folk herbalists used it for wounds, sore throats, and general tonic purposes, essentially an herb to keep in the pocket for bumps and scrapes. The surprising thing today is that modern researchers have isolated compounds from self-heal that show antimicrobial and antiviral activity in lab studies, which offers a neat continuity between old uses and new scientific curiosity. Historically, self-heal shows up in European and Asian herbals. Traditional uses included applying crushed leaves to cuts, making a tea for sore throats, and using it as part of wound dressings. In traditional Chinese medicine, a related plant has similar use patterns. In vitro studies, that is, studies in cells and petri dishes, have found that extracts of prunella can inhibit certain bacteria and viruses under lab conditions. Researchers point out constituents like rosmarinic acid, tannins, and other phenolic groups that plausibly underlie these effects in controlled settings. That's promising, but not equivalent to clinical proof in humans. Practically, traditional preparations involve topical poultices or warm infusions, drunk as a mild tea. Safety note: self-heal is generally regarded as mild, but allergies to plant material are always possible. Also, do not assume that topical application is safe near open wounds without proper medical advice, and avoid harvesting from contaminated sites. Next, we move into the plant that appears in archaeological debates, a herb that has a surprisingly ancient backstory. 5. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. Feathery, fern-like leaves and flat-topped clusters of tiny white or pinkish flowers make this plant stand out in meadows and roadsides. The big surprise? Yarrow is one of the plants that shows up in archaeological contexts, including pollen and phytochemical traces at some ancient burial sites. Some researchers have pointed to yarrow or similar flowering herbs in connections with ritual or medicinal use tens of thousands of years ago. That has made yarrow a favorite example when people discuss continuity between ancient plant knowledge and modern herbalism. Across cultures, yarrow appears in folklore and herbal texts as a wound herb, astringent and anti-inflammatory agent. It was used in poultices, as a tea for fevers, and in stings. In folklore, it's often linked to battlefield medicine and quick field care. From a chemical standpoint, yarrow contains flavonoids, sesquiterpene lactones, and bitter compounds that have activity in laboratory assays. For instance, mild antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory signals. Again, most human-focused clinical evidence is limited or mixed. The archaeological record raises interesting questions about how ancient humans valued aromatic herbs. But it doesn't prove specific medicinal efficacy today. Traditional use: fresh yarrow leaves crushed and applied as a poultice or an infusion used as a wash are common threads in historical texts. Safety caveat: yarrow can cause allergic reactions in people sensitive to plants in the Asteraceae family, and the plant may interact with blood-thinning medications because of certain constituents. Also, pregnant people are generally advised to avoid strong herbal interventions unless under professional guidance. The archaeological debate remains. Is the presence of yarrow pollen a sign of deliberate burial rites or a product of bedding and chance? It's a reminder that context shapes interpretation. Coming up is a delicate, soft-leaved green many foragers praise as a skin helper. 4. Chickweed, Stellaria media, soft, bright green mats of tiny leaves and inconspicuous white star-like flowers that pop up in cool seasons. Chickweed is surprising because it's both a common salad green among wild food enthusiasts and a long-standing folk remedy for skin irritation and mild inflammations. People have used it fresh as an emollient poultice for itchy rashes and externally for minor wounds. Internally, it appears in old herbals as a gentle nutritive. From a nutrition standpoint, chickweed offers a mix of vitamins and minerals and is noted for a mild, fresh flavor that mixes well into salads or as a cooked green. Chemically, it contains saponins and flavonoids, which explain both the plant's slight surfactant properties and its antioxidant potential in lab studies. Yet, as with most wild herbs, rigorous clinical trials are sparse. The safety and efficacy for medicinal use remain largely within the realm of traditional practice and preliminary research. People traditionally crushed fresh chickweed into salves or applied leaves directly to soothe skin. Some cultures also simmered it into soups in spring as a tender green. Safety note: while generally low risk, chickweed can resemble other small plants to the inexperienced eye. Avoid collecting from areas treated with herbicides or near busy roads, and be cautious if you have plant allergies. Our next plant is one many people recognize by sight and taste, but underestimate nutritionally. 3. Dandelion, Taraxacum officinale. The sunny yellow flowers, puffball seed heads and serrated leaves are practically universal. The surprising point: dandelion isn't just a nuisance. Its greens are rich in vitamins A, C and K and minerals like potassium, and its roots store inulin, a kind of fermentable fiber that functions as a prebiotic. Cultures have long used dandelion as both food and medicine. Everything from roasted roots as a coffee substitute to simmered greens in salads or sautés. Historically, dandelion shows up across Eurasia and North America in folk pharmacopoeias for digestive support, liver complaints, and as a spring tonic. Lab studies and nutritional analyses back up the idea that dandelion greens are nutritionally dense compared with many common salad greens, and inulin is a well-known dietary fiber used commercially as a prebiotic in some food products. Some small studies and traditional use reports suggest diuretic effects from dandelion, but human results are mixed and often limited in scope. Traditional preparations range from young leaves eaten raw or lightly cooked to roasted roots used as a bitter coffee alternative. The root and greens have different flavor profiles and culinary roles. Safety note: dandelion can cross-react with people allergic to related plants like ragweed, and because of its diuretic reputation, people on certain medications should consult a professional before routine medicinal use. Also, watch for pesticide exposure in lawn plants. Next, a plant that packs a literal sting, but the sting masks a surprising nutritional and therapeutic profile. 2. Stinging nettle, Urtica dioica. Tall, serrated leaves covered in tiny, hollow hairs that cause a stinging sensation when touched raw. The surprise: once nettles are blanched or cooked, which destroys the stinging hairs, they become a remarkably nutritious green, rich in iron, calcium and vitamins, and parts of the plant have been the subject of modern clinical research for conditions ranging from allergy symptoms to joint pain, though results vary and processing matters. Historically, nettle has been used as a cooked vegetable, as a spring tonic, and topically for arthritic complaints. From a scientific perspective, nettle contains flavonoids, carotenoids, minerals, and bioactive proteins. Some clinical trials and systematic reviews look at processed nettle products, freeze-dried extracts, leaf preparations, for symptoms of hay fever and benign prostatic hyperplasia, with mixed but occasionally promising findings. It's important to emphasize that raw nettle and processed formulations are different. The stinging hairs contain irritant compounds, while extracts capture different soluble components. Traditional preparations include boiling or steaming to remove the sting, then using the leaves like spinach. The root has different traditional uses and chemical profiles. Safety. The raw plant causes pain and rash on contact. Always process properly if using as food, and consult a clinician before using concentrated nettle products alongside medications or for chronic conditions. Also avoid harvesting from contaminated sites. Finally, we arrive at a plant that's botanically close to a widely used commercial fiber source. 1. Plantain, Plantago major and relatives. Broad oval leaves that form a basal rosette and produce narrow seed spikes. Very common in compacted soil, along paths, and in lawn edges. The standout surprise: plantain is a botanical relative of psyllium. Both belong to the Plantago genus, and though they're used differently, plantain's mucilaginous leaves and seeds have a long history of topical and digestive use. Traditionally, plantain was a first aid plant for bites and stings, used for poultices and washes. Its mucilage acts as a soothing, protective film, which explains why it shows up across many folk traditions as a go-to for skin irritations. Chemically, plantain contains mucilage, tannins and compounds like aucubin that have been explored in lab settings for antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activity. The mucilage is the reason comparisons to psyllium are meaningful. Psyllium husks are used commercially for their soluble fiber, whereas plantain's leaves and seeds also produce a gelatinous quality when wet. Both can influence stool bulk and gut motility in different ways when appropriately prepared, but they are not interchangeable without knowledge and processing. Scientific literature includes studies on various Plantago species for digestive health and topical applications, but again, robust clinical evidence for many traditional uses is limited. Traditional preparations included crushing fresh leaves into poultices for bites and minor wounds, making infusions for sore throats, and using seeds in simple folk remedies for bowel regulation. Safety note: while plantain is widely regarded as safe topically and often edible, correct identification is important. Several Plantago species look similar, and harvesting from polluted soils is a concern. Those on medication for bowel or blood sugar conditions should discuss plant-based fibers with their clinician before making changes. Putting it together, what does this list teach us? The line between weed and medicine is a matter of context. What a lawn minder sees as a pest, a medieval monk saw as a pantry and apothecary. What a modern scientist sees as an antioxidant signal in a petri dish, a traditional healer may have used as a topical for minor wounds or a spring tonic. Foragers and gardeners benefit from recognizing three truths. Commonness is not the same as triviality. Abundance often made a plant valuable historically. Lab studies are different from human evidence. Promising compounds require careful testing. And safety matters. Correct ID, source, and professional guidance are non-negotiable. Remember the two standout points. Yarrow's presence in archaeological contexts reminds us that humans have long had relationships with certain aromatic herbs, though interpretation is nuanced and debated, and plantain's botanical kinship with psyllium shows how closely related species can end up as both folk remedies and commercial products in different cultural and industrial contexts. If any of these plants intrigued you, consider checking reputable field guides, connecting with local foraging groups, or consulting a clinical herbalist or medical professional before experimenting. And always avoid collecting from chemically treated lawns or busy roadsides. If one plant on this list surprised you, tell me which one in the comments. And if you want a deep dive on preparation, safety, or the science behind any single plant, say so, and I'll cover it next. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe to get more grounded explorations of wild foods, plant history, and cautious herbalism. Thanks for watching, and keep looking twice at that patch of green outside. The weeds may have stories worth knowing.